it's still tremendous. It's a big shock, you know.
I can't. I mean, I talk about it, and it's hard for me. I mean, when I first visited the site where Medgar Evers was killed, which is where we shot the reenactment of it, right on the very site, and they were taking me through it. I stood on the driveway at the spot that he was murdered, and I started crying. And, you know, it's very overpowering. I mean, it takes you over. And
when you look at Mel Brooks, you're witnessing comedy history still breathing. And this man is 98, a walking monument to laughter and grief. He's watched his wife pass, buried mad friends, and outlived nearly every legend from his generation. For decades, he's been the one who made the planet crack up no matter how dark things got. This is the same dude who spent night after night with Rob Reiner crushing dinner off trays, watching Jeopardy like clockwork. But yesterday, when cameras caught Mel outside his quiet, hidden-away home where he's been living in near isolation for years, the atmosphere felt ice-cold, heavy. No smile, no quick joke to slice through the tension. Just a man who looked completely drained, as if an entire century finally crashed down on him all at once. Now headlines are screaming about Rob Reiner. The horrifying details, the arrest of his son Nick, man, Hollywood is shaking to its foundation. One violent night and a whole dynasty shattered. Mel Brooks has stayed completely silent, and that silence screams louder than any headline. Everyone in Hollywood knows Mel wasn't just tight with Rob's father, he was blood. Rob's godfather, his Uncle Mel, the man who changed his diapers, taught him comedic timing and watched him transform from a wild kid into one of the most respected directors alive. Mel wasn't observing from a distance. He was there through every chapter. So when he finally let a trusted journalist sit down in his living room, there were no lights, no cameras, no PR spin, just a recorder and the truth spilling out. What dropped next wasn't a statement. It was a confession, raw and unsettling.
You know, my father said, you know, there's going to be, he wanted to tell us before we went to sleep that night. He says, when you wake up, there's a man that's coming to visit, a man, you know, and because he didn't want us to get scared if we came in and saw this strange man. There'll be a man sleeping, and so just don't wake him up, he's asleep. So now at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, me and my sister, we see this guy, he's like in a window seat, you know, and I go, I said, is that the man? That's the man. And she says, is that the man? Yeah, that's the man. That's the man. And so Mel Brooks wakes up and he sees these two little kids going, are you the man? Are you the man? Yes, I'm the man. So that was my first introduction to Mel Brooks. He was the man.
It flipped everything we thought we knew about what really went down inside that Brentwood house. Mel didn't kick off with the crime itself. He started with guilt. Sitting in his armchair, his hands trembled, not from age but pure anger. He said people keep labeling this a tragedy, a sudden break, an accident. But Mel looked up, eyes sharp and glassy, and said this wasn't an accident, and it definitely wasn't sudden. According to him, this was a slow-motion collapse that played out over 10 brutal years. Everyone close enough witnessed it happening, but nobody had the courage to intervene. They loved Rob too much to confront him. And here's where it gets gut-wrenching. Mel, the warmest man in comedy, admitted that those closest to Rob and Michelle knew Nick was unstable. They saw the storm forming, and still, they stayed quiet. But Mel made it crystal clear this wasn't about some monster suddenly appearing. It was about parents whose love went way too far, morphing into the very thing that destroyed them. Then he rewound to one Sunday afternoon that still haunts him, 6 months before the tragedy. Calm day, sunlight pouring through the window, the kind that's supposed to feel peaceful. Rob showed up at Mel's spot, same routine he'd done for years, but this time something was off. Rob didn't touch his food, he just paced, restless, wired with dread. Mel said Rob looked like a man being hunted inside his own existence. He confessed that Nick had moved back into the Brentwood estate after another failed rehab attempt, but this time it felt different, darker. Even though Nick was in his 30s, everyone still called him the boy. That alone, Mel said, told the whole story. Rob told Mel that Nick had become unpredictable, delusional, agitated, snapping without warning. The tension at home had turned toxic. Then Rob said something that made Mel freeze. He whispered that he'd started locking his bedroom door at night. Rob Reiner, a man known for openness, family, and empathy, now barricading himself inside his own home. That's not concern. That's genuine fear. When Mel asked why not call the police, why not get protection, Rob gave an answer that still echoes through Mel's house. He said, I promised Michelle I wouldn't give up on him. If I kick him out, he ends up on the street. If I keep him here, maybe I can save him. Mel slammed his hand on the armrest when he recalled it. He said he yelled at Rob, told him straight that he wasn't saving his son. he was protecting Danger. But Rob wouldn't listen. That Reiner stubbornness kicked in, the same relentless will that made him a Hollywood legend, now driving him straight into tragedy. That same stubborn drive that once made Rob unstoppable on a film set turned dangerous at home. Mel Brooks believes that refusal to draw boundaries became the real breaking point. The violence might grab headlines, but what Mel revealed about the money, that's what truly twisted the knife. People see the wealth, the Castle Rock empire, the legacy, and assume money makes pain disappear. Mel said that couldn't be further from the truth. Over the last 2 years, things didn't just drain Rob and Michelle emotionally. It started draining them financially too. Not because they were anywhere close to broke, but because the pressure never stopped coming.
We have a big courtroom, and, Jack has this long monologue. And I said to him before, I said, look, I'll give you a choice. Either I can shoot, if you want to shoot ready now, I'll shoot you right now. If you want some time to work on it, rehearse it, I will shoot all the reaction shots first, and then we turn the camera around on you and, whatever. He said, why don't you, shoot the reaction shots, and that will give me it. So, I got Tom Cruise cut away, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, I got, Kevin Pollak. I mean, the judge, the jury. I'm doing all the reaction shots.
Mel said Nick's demands grew relentless. He wasn't asking anymore. He was demanding payment, claiming it was payback for how he was raised. Mel explained that Nick spun his demands like reparations, twisting his parents' kindness and open-minded values into guilt. He used their compassion as a weapon. He insisted that his struggles deserved millions, and he pushed that narrative hard. Mel said it wasn't chaos. It was ice-cold calculation. Rob would show up to Mel's house with tears in his eyes, phone shaking in his hands, scrolling through messages that were cruel, manipulative, and packed with blame. Nick accused his father of everything: his pain, his failures, his addictions. Yet somehow, the very next day, Rob would still cave, buy him a car, pay his rent, fund another project. Mel called it the Hollywood illusion, the idea that if you throw enough money, love, or time at a problem, you can rewrite the ending. Rob genuinely believed he could direct his son's recovery like one of his films, set the scene right, control the lighting, fix the script. But life isn't a movie. There are no retakes. Mel saw where it was headed long before anyone else admitted it. He said it all became crystal clear during the holidays last year, a small, cozy family gathering that felt tense from the moment Nick walked in. The air was tight, electric, like it could snap at any second. Mel couldn't take his eyes off Nick, but more than that, he watched Nick's eyes locked on Rob. He said it wasn't the look of a son anymore. It was cold, focused, almost territorial. Then Rob made one of his classic self-deprecating jokes, the kind that always made people laugh. Everyone chuckled except Nick. He didn't even blink. Later that night, Mel pulled Rob aside. He grabbed him by the shoulders and begged him to act. "Robbie, you need to get him out. He doesn't look at you with love. He looks at you with ownership." Mel said it with everything he had left, but Rob, being the loyal, kind man he was, took it as criticism. "You don't understand him like I do," he said. "He's hurting." That's when Mel broke down in the interview, not for himself, but for Rob and for the boy he once knew. The kid who played on Carl Reiner's living room floor while Mel cracked jokes nearby, the boy who grew up into a man who couldn't tell the difference between love and enabling. Mel said that guilt still eats at him every night.
Just the thought of a man being, killed in front of his family like that, and having a couple of sons myself, the thought of being taken away from my sons like that, it's just so profoundly disturbing that, and that feeling permeated the whole making of the movie. I mean, there was a tremendous coming together. Everybody had the feeling that we're doing something important here, and it's meant to be seen, and all of that. And at the same time, we were all kind of holding on to each other a little bit. But there was a lot of.
As the last living pillar of that golden generation of comedy, he feels he failed his people, his family, his legacy. And the part that haunts him most, he never called the police himself. He said it still feels like a weight he'll carry forever. But then came the moment that froze the whole room. The night it all happened. The official timeline sounds sterile. Times, locations, reports, just numbers. But Mel says he knows what really unfolded in the hours leading up to it because Rob called him that night. It was late. Mel was already in bed when the phone rang. He almost didn't pick up, but something in his gut told him to answer. Rob's voice was faint, barely above a whisper. It wasn't small talk. It wasn't a joke. Mel said he wasn't saying goodbye, but it felt like goodbye. Rob told him, "He's losing control again." He's shouting about the will. He thinks we're cutting him out." Mel panicked. He told him, "Leave. Robbie, get in the car. Come here now." He said he begged him over and over, but Rob's reply stopped him cold. "I can't leave Michelle. She's with him. She's trying to calm him down. If I leave, he'll take it out on her." Mel went silent as he retold that line. Rob Reiner stayed in that house not out of denial, but out of love. He knew the risk. He knew things had gone too far, but he couldn't abandon his wife in the middle of that chaos. He stayed to protect her, fully aware of what it might cost him. That was the last time Mel Brooks ever heard Rob Reiner's voice. The media paints Nick as chaos personified, but Mel refuses that version. He insists you can't grasp what really happened without understanding the years of resentment, pressure, and emotional weight that built up long before that final night. Mel called it the shadow of Carl Reiner, the shadow of legacy, the impossible task of being born into greatness and trying to stand on your own 2 feet when the world already expects perfection. He said that kind of inheritance can crush you if you're not built strong enough to bear it. According to Mel, Nick wasn't talentless. He had vision, he had ideas, but he wanted the applause without the grind, the fame without the fight. When the industry didn't hand him what he thought he deserved, he didn't self-reflect. He found someone to blame. That blame landed on the man who gave him everything. Nick resented Rob for being too big, too respected, too loved. He convinced himself that his father's success stole his own future, that every closed door was Rob's fault. Mel said it was the same psychological pattern he'd seen in Hollywood, again and again, jealousy rotting from the inside out. But this time it went darker than anything he'd ever witnessed. From the outside, the Brentwood home looked perfect. Manicured lawns, polished hedges, every decoration in its place. To the world, it screamed stability. But Mel said that inside, the cracks had been spreading for years. The rot was quiet but relentless. And Mel didn't just blame the family dynamic, he went after the entire system around them. His tone sharpened when he spoke about the so-called professionals who were supposed to help. He said there were therapists, consultants, doctors, all being paid to guide and protect. But instead, they minimized every warning sign.
And every time he's off camera, he gives exactly the same performance that you see that's on camera. After 2 or 3, I go up to him and I said, "Jack, maybe you want to save a little because, he's full out in every one and he's off camera." And he says, "Rob, you don't understand. I love to act." He says, "I don't get that much of a chance to do a great part." And then we turned the camera around on him and it was the same.
Nailed it each time.
Every time.
According to Mel, they told Rob and Michelle that tough love was outdated. They called it radical compassion. They softened the truth until it disappeared. They sugarcoated it. Mel said bitterly they took Rob's money just to tell him what he wanted to hear, that Nick was struggling, not dangerous. He didn't hold back. Mel called them accomplices, saying they wrapped destructive behavior in polite language, giving it clean medical labels. "They sanitized it," he said, voice trembling. "They gave it a name. They filed it away. They never said what it really was, a ticking clock." Mel said that's why he's speaking now. He doesn't care about the trial or the outcome. To him, the courtroom is just paperwork. The real story has already been written. What he wants is for people to remember Rob Reiner for who he was, not what happened to him. He doesn't want Rob remembered as just a victim, but as a man who kept showing up even when everything inside him was breaking. Rob didn't quit, Mel said quietly. He stayed. He believed he could still be the father his son needed, the one who doesn't walk away when things get ugly. Mel said that's what true love looks like. Even when it hurts, it's not dramatic or loud. It's choosing to stand in the fire because you still think love might fix it. "Everyone says they'd give everything for their kids," Mel whispered. Rob actually did. And then his voice cracked, because that choice didn't save his son. It didn't bring healing. It only sealed Nick's fate forever. As the interview wound down, Mel went silent. The room around him told its own story. Old movie posters, photos of Carl and Rob, shots from Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, and a framed picture of Anne Bancroft smiling in the corner. Mel looked around slowly, surrounded by ghosts of laughter, the weight of legacy pressing in. He looked like a man standing on an island made of memories, holding on to what little light was left. Mel Brooks said the hardest part now isn't the anger, it's the silence. The phone doesn't ring, the Sunday dinners are gone, the laughter that once filled the air has vanished. And that silence, Mel said, is the loudest sound he's ever known. "The link to Carl is gone. I'm the last one," he whispered. That sentence, he admitted, will follow him for the rest of his life. He said the hardest truth to live with is knowing he saw it coming and couldn't stop it. The weight doesn't lift, it just settles deeper. Mel talked briefly about the private funeral plans, away from cameras and red carpets. He said he'll speak there, but warned that people shouldn't expect jokes. No humor, no clever deflection, just honesty. He plans to stand up and tell the same truth he told the reporter. Raw, unfiltered, and real. He wants every powerful parent in Hollywood to hear it, to stop pretending money can fix what love refuses to face. You can't love danger out of someone, Mel said sharply. You can't buy it away. You can't explain it away. For a man who built his life turning pain into laughter, Mel said there's no comedy left in this story. This isn't absurd, he said. This is what happens when love loses balance. As the journalist began packing up, Mel suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm. He wasn't done. There was something else. Something he needed to say. His tone shifted, urgent and low. He said Nick didn't act alone. There were people around him, friends who lived off Rob's money, who encouraged his delusions, who whispered resentment in his ear just to keep the drama alive. Mel's voice cracked as he said it. Nick may have held the weapon, but plenty of people helped sharpen the blade. That single line defined everything. This was not the Mel Brooks the world knew, not the entertainer, not the showman. This was the witness, the truth teller, a man stripped of laughter, stripped of irony, standing face to face with reality he couldn't joke away anymore. It tore straight through the glossy image of the Reiner legacy. The awards, the applause, the spotless Brentwood reputation gone. What was left were people, just people. Fragile, flawed, hopeful human people who loved too much, forgave too easily, and saw too late where that love was leading. So when the trial begins in January and cameras zoom in on Nick Reiner in his orange jumpsuit, Mel says the world shouldn't look away. Don't let it fade into another headline or scrolling ticker. Remember him, 98 years old, sitting alone in his chair, crying for the boy he once bounced on his knee and the best friend he couldn't save. Remember that real truth isn't clean. It's built out of small moments. The ignored warnings, the quiet excuses, the doors left unlocked because locking them felt too cruel. That's the part no one wants to talk about. Not the explosion, but the slow unraveling that led there. Mel's silence has broken now, and its echo isn't fading. It lingers like a chill. The realization that even the people who dedicate their lives to giving us happy endings sometimes have to live through the darkest chapters themselves. The interview didn't end with spectacle or tears. It ended quietly. Mel turned back toward the window, staring out at the blinding California sun. The light looked too bright for a day that heavy. His body looked frail, his face lined with nearly a century of laughter and loss. But his eyes were steady. Mel Brooks said he's done protecting illusions. No more polishing legacies or guarding reputations. He's not protecting names anymore. He's protecting truth. And that truth, as he tells it, is harsh but real. Rob Reiner wasn't destroyed overnight. He was slowly consumed by the very life he tried to protect. That kind of tragedy, Mel said, doesn't fade with time. No amount of laughter can patch it up. What's left now is the reckoning for everyone. The reminder that behind every perfect family photo, every polished legacy, there are cracks we choose not to see. Mel Brooks did what few friends ever could. He told the raw, uncomfortable truth about the man he loved most. And now that truth hangs in the air, impossible to ignore. He stripped away the polish and showed the pain underneath. And that's exactly why people should be listening. When a man near the end of his life feels the need to raise his voice like this, ignoring him would be pure arrogance. The loss of Rob Reiner didn't just break hearts, it rattled Hollywood's foundation. But Mel Brooks believes that if people actually absorb the message behind his friend's tragedy, it might finally break the cycle that keeps repeating in silence. Yes, the investigation moves on. Yes, the trial is coming, but to Mel, the verdict is already in. He believes the system failed, the experts failed, and most painfully that the unconditional, endless love inside the Reiner family failed too. It's a brutal truth, one Mel never wanted to face, but he says it's the only honest one left. And now that truth sits in all our hands. As the headlines fade, Mel is left with the image that never leaves him. An old man sitting alone in a quiet room, carrying the weight of a dynasty's end. That weight doesn't disappear when the cameras shut off or the journalists leave. It follows him through sleepless nights, through the hours when there's no laughter left to drown it out. This isn't about blame, Mel said softly. It's about honesty. About saying what everyone around Rob saw but couldn't admit while there was still time to change it. Mel insists he isn't rewriting history or tearing anyone down. He's making sure the myth doesn't turn into a lie. He doesn't want Rob remembered as just a victim or another tragic headline. He wants people to see the quiet years that led there, the ignored warnings, the kind-hearted excuses, the love that blinded instead of saved. This story isn't supposed to be comfortable, Mel said, because real life isn't neat. It leaves cracks, it leaves guilt, it leaves you wondering what one different choice could have changed everything. He admitted speaking out doesn't give him peace. If anything, it makes the ache sharper, but silence was worse. Silence, he said, felt like betrayal, another layer of pretending. So now he talks. Not as the legend, not as the comedian, but as an old man who loved his friend and watched him walk towards something he couldn't stop. And that truth, heavy, unfinished, and raw, lingers in the room long after Mel stops talking. There was something else Mel said that never made headlines, but the reporter couldn't forget it. He said the hardest part isn't just losing Rob, it's realizing how close everyone came to stopping it and still didn't. He talked about the warning signs that seemed clear only after the fact, the unease, the fear in the air that no one wanted to name. Mel admitted even he doubted himself at times. He wondered if he was overreacting, if age had made him paranoid, if love was blinding him too. That self-doubt, Mel said, is what danger feeds on. It grows in hesitation, it survives in politeness, it thrives when people choose comfort over confrontation. Rob, Mel said, lived in that tension, torn between protecting his family and protecting the image of togetherness he'd spent his career building. He didn't want to be the father who gave up. He didn't want to be the man who admitted things had gotten out of control. And that pressure to be patient, to be understanding, to stay kind, slowly trapped him. The most painful part, Mel said, is knowing none of it came from bad intentions. Everyone thought they were doing the loving thing. Everyone believed one more chance might fix it. Then Mel paused. He leaned back in his chair, the exhaustion etched deep in his face. But love without limits stops being love, he said quietly. It becomes fear dressed up as compassion. The reporter said Mel didn't look angry anymore, just tired, the kind of tired that comes from years of regret. It was clear he wasn't speaking for attention or fame. He was speaking because carrying the truth alone had finally become too heavy to bear. Mel Brooks didn't hold back when people called this tragedy unthinkable. He said that's just how the world avoids accountability. If it's unthinkable, no one has to ask what they ignored. He told the reporter, but this wasn't lightning from a clear sky. It was a storm that warned everyone before it hit. Mel said Hollywood has a dangerous habit of normalizing dysfunction when it comes wrapped in talent and money. The behavior that would never be excused in an ordinary family suddenly becomes eccentric, artistic, or misunderstood. Red flags turn into PR statements, and danger gets treated like inconvenience. Rob Reiner, Mel said, got caught inside that same system. Everywhere he turned, people told him to be kind, patient, understanding, but almost no one told him to be firm, and even fewer told him to be afraid. Fear isn't weakness, Mel said quietly. It's information, but Rob lived surrounded by people who convinced him to ignore it. Mel said there's a difference between empathy and surrender, and Rob crossed that line without even realizing it. Not because he was naive, but because he was loyal to the end. Rob believed love could outlast anything if you just stayed long enough, Mel said. That belief, as pure as it sounds, can turn fatal when reality doesn't play along. His voice shook when he said it, not from anger, but recognition. Too many families will see themselves in this, he said. The silence, the excuses, the hope that tomorrow will fix what today clearly won't. That's why Mel keeps speaking, not to shame anyone, but to destroy the illusion that this came out of nowhere. Sometimes the warning isn't silent, he said. Sometimes it's screaming, and people just don't want to hear it. In the end, this story leaves one haunting truth. Fame protects you from nothing. Not from pain, not from betrayal, not even from the people you love most. Rob Reiner's legacy will always live through his films. That's permanent. But now, because Mel Brooks chose truth over silence, Rob's legacy carries something else too, a painful lesson about the limits of love and the fragility of the human heart. The silence has been shattered. The shock is real. And this reality cuts deeper than any movie ever could. This was never a story meant to comfort. It was a story Mel Brooks had to tell before time ran out. Whether we wanted to hear it or not, it's the story we needed to hear because pretending otherwise only guarantees that it happens again. In the end, there's only one way to truly honor someone who's gone. Tell the truth. Not a polished version, not a rewritten narrative, just truth. Raw, human, uncomfortable truth. Mel Brooks honored Rob Reiner in the only way he could. Now, by refusing to let his story be wrapped in something neat or convenient, he exposed the heart of it. The pain, the warning, the reality that love, no matter how strong, sometimes can't save you from what's already growing in the dark. So don't let this story fade out with the headlines. Let it stay with you. Let it make you uncomfortable. Let it make you look at your own family, your own limits, and your own silence. If this story hit you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. so the message reaches further. Comment your thoughts. Your voice matters here. Share this story so more people understand what really happened behind the headlines. And make sure to subscribe to Old Hollywood Whispers for more stories that go beyond the surface. Stories that challenge, confront, and refuse to be ignored. Some stories aren't meant to entertain. They're meant to wake people up. And this one should stay with you long after the screen goes dark.